Hello. All right. This is going to be more of an educational video instead of the usual headline of the day format. We're going to be looking at the old school Atlanta metal scene of the 80s and early 1990s. Something that isn't talked about a whole lot in comparison to other scenes of that era. So this video is going to appeal more to the folks out there who are kind of already genre enthusiasts, people who've already heard the big thrash bands, have already explored early extreme music from Florida, New York, Sweden, Finland. You already know Brazil. Wanted to get into some lesser hailed scenes in the metal underground. Uh, reason I say this is because I know there's people watching the channel who are kind of just interested in my videos about like Kiss and Judas Priest and Metallica, Megadeth, and this video is not really for that audience, although you're welcome to watch if you're, just interested in it, of course. Um, but I'm going to be referencing some stuff like you already know what I'm talking about. Before I get started, if any old heads or people who know more about this shit than I do want to leave a comment and suggest some bands I overlooked, feel free. I'm always looking to find new shit to check out or new old shit. Uh, I mean, uh, I just wanted to kind of do like a little primer on old school Atlanta metal, because certain scenes are almost over explained. I mean, of course, there's inevitably going to be some bands that I overlook, but I mean, hell, no one else did this on YouTube, so someone's got to do it. For this video, I'm purposely stopping in the early 90s, so the timeline of events is pretty much going to be from the formation of the band Warrior in like 1979. And they would become Hallows Eve in 1984 after one demo. And I'm going to stop around the release of Demon Seas Faustian Dawn demo in 1993. Please don't come in the comments asking about Baroness, Mastodon, anything remotely close to Stoner Rock, Stoner Doom, or don't ask any goofy shit like, what about Sadistic Ritual? What about Father Befouled? Because it's like, yeah, those bands exist, but they weren't around in 1989. I will give a shout out to Evulsion, who formed in 94. Dimensions of Darkness is awesome. I'll also give a shout out to Malformity, who I believe started in Birmingham, Alabama, but I mean they're an Atlanta band. I mean, uh, you've probably seen them if you've gone to enough metal shows in Atlanta. But those guys started in like '91, I believe. All right, so the roots of the like proper heavy metal underground in Atlanta seem to begin with a band called Warrior, who formed in 1979. Now, keep in mind, in '79, most people's idea of heavy metal, according to critics and magazines and shit, was like Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Rush, Blue Oyster Cult. You know, I mean, even bands like Judas Priest hadn't really hit it big yet. So Atlanta was getting in on this stuff before metal was even like a viable way to make a living. Uh, I mean, this is before you had the US Festival and MTV and all that. Warrior would release the Metal Prisoners demo in '83. And I mean, most of us know, I mean, '83 is kind of when the extreme side of metal started making its presence known a bit, like, you know, worldwide. I mean, you had like Kill 'Em All, Melissa, Show No Mercy, Heavy Metal Maniac, At War with Satan, like all these great records that were like, decidedly like up in the ante. And while they were, still taking influence from, your Sabbath, Priest, Maiden type bands for sure. They were also getting more extreme. The raw production, the speed, the subject matter, the drumming. It's clear that this new type of heavy metal was like its own thing, separate from the more like commercial shit out there. You can almost see this schism between the old way and the new way, kind of illustrated by the history of the band Warrior, because half of Warrior will go on to form Sinister Angel in 1983. And Sinister Angel put out their self-titled EP in '84. I mean, it's good shit. It's solid heavy metal, um, early American power metal stuff. There's those leftover like Sabbathisms, melodic Maiden, bass, galloping parts. Hell, some Rush, Budgie, Deep Purple, Rainbow. You know what I'm talking about. But like it's definitely good stuff. But the other half of Warrior, Stacey Anderson and Tommy Stewart, they went on to form Hallows Eve. And it's clear that these guys were wanting to go in a more extreme direction because this new project kind of shied away from all those leftover 70s elements you found in Sinister Angel, and was pretty clearly like embracing the new speed metal, thrash metal sound. So Hallows Eve, if you are an underground metal enthusiast, you probably already heard or at least seen the cover of Tales of Terror. I mean, it's kind of regarded as like an unsung classic in the metal community already. It's one of those that like people pull out when they meet another metal fan, and like it's already established that you've both heard the obvious classics, that you should have heard when you were a teenager. Uh, so I mean, like if I met someone who's never heard of like Infernal Overkill or Darkness Descends or Pleasure to Kill, like you probably wouldn't ask them about Hallows Eve, Tales of Terror. But like if you're new to thrash metal, you've only heard the big four. I wouldn't say okay, so the next step is Hallows Eve, but they definitely deserve their place in the history book, especially for being so early in Atlanta, man. Now I mean, Tales of Terror is my favorite, man, but Death and Insanity, their second album from '86, and then Monument from '88. Those are both solid. I just like Tales of Terror more because it's more raw, more of a speed metal feel to it. Monument's kind of getting that like 1988, standard thrash sound where like every band on their third or fourth album is starting to get a little tighter, more technical. Now Monument's definitely not like full on Megadeth out, the way like Destruction and Creator were starting to sound, and you're definitely not going to mistake it for like uh, Death Row, Deception Ignored, an album of that nature. It's not Heathen or Toxic or something, but still. Now, I want to do a brief aside on the band Incubus, and not the Incubus who later became Opprobrium or the '90s radio rock Incubus. Definitely not them. Almost actually didn't include Incubus in the video just because the lineup that recorded on their '87 demo was not located in Georgia, but the group was formed in Atlanta by Steve Scully Shoemaker, who played guitar on the first Hallows Eve record, and it's a name you'll hear again in this video, of course. As many of you already know, if you're aware of like Morbid Angel before Altars of Madness, at least, you already know about Mike Browning, and you probably already know about his involvement, playing drums on the Incubus demo. It's solid early extreme metal, when things were starting to move in a more solidly death metal direction. And it's not my favorite, little underground release of '87. I mean, I can say I prefer like Poison Into the Abyss. Like that's another band who share a name with another wimpier band. But that Incubus demo definitely worth checking out if you're a death metal fan. I don't like it as much as what Browning did with Morbid Angel or what he did with Nocturnus either. And yeah, I do actually like the keyboards on the Key and Thresholds, but I really just wanted to mention Incubus to show that like Atlanta had close ties to what was brewing down in Florida at the time. Now before I go back to Hallows Eve. I want to talk about this band Necropolis, particularly their '88 full length Contemplating Slaughter. I never really hear anybody talk about this band. Hell, I think this record kicks ass. It's still thrash, but it's got like a kind of a sinister vibe to it. There's good type musicianship, but it's not like overly polished. It's only around a half hour long, which is like really a good length for any rock album in my book. I'm actually surprised this doesn't really have like widespread like 20-year-olds on the internet talking about it yet. You can hear some of that like death thrash sound too, like Morbid Saint, maybe Protector. It doesn't really sound like those bands, but it's like a darker, more extreme type of thrash. Regardless, you can tell these guys saw the writing on the metaphorical wall of darkness and evil, and steered clear of any sort of like anthraxisms, testamentisms, that sort of thing. Now, if you want to hear a band that was more in line with, say, Anthrax or Power Mad or something, there's Kinetic Descent from Atlanta, right down to like the song titles and the kind of like California surfer aesthetic of like how they dress. Like these guys were not really about like darkness and evil like the other Atlanta bands. Now their '87 demo, "The Fall of Individualism," I think that's pretty kick-ass. I mean, you can hear bits of early Overkill, early Anthrax, Halloween. Even kind of reminds me of Sanctuary, Refuge Denied at times. It's not really super heavy or brutal stuff, but I mean, very melodic, thrashy. They've got more of a foot in the heavy metal door than some of the other bands I'm mentioning. But now, of course, by the time Kinetic Descent released their full length in '91, entitled "I Will Fight No More Forever," I mean, hell, just down from the title, man. I mean, like, title's not too metal, cover's kind of lame. You got a song based on the movie 12 Angry Men. So, I mean, you can kind of just look at it, see the year it was released. You can tell they were going for more of a technical, so called, like, thinking man's metal. You know what I'm talking about, like lyrics about society. The power metal parts are kind of pushed out in favor of more generic, kind of anthraxy, kind of practice what you preach era, testament-y, lighthearted kind of sound. And I mean, if this album had come out like California 1988, I think it'd probably be talked about more. But by 1991, it's getting harder to care about this particular style of thrash for me, anyway. I think from '91, best example of this specific style of tech thrash, high pitched vocal stuff would probably be like, you know, Heathen, Victims Deception, and this just ain't that good, or not as good as that. I mean, around that time, you also had stuff like Afflicted from Sweden, kind of taking this kind of prog power thrash sound and mixing it with death metal, so it's kind of just too late in the game to be sounding like Kinetic Descent at this point. But definitely check out the Fall of Individualism demo from '87. Now, going back to Hallows Eve, Steve Scully Shoemaker, I hope I'm saying his last name. I guess it's Shoemaker, but not content with just being extreme and Hallows Eve. Seems to be, from what I can gather on the internet at least, he's kind of like the mastermind behind a band whose name I'm probably going to fuck up called Lestrigus Nosferatus. Lestrigus Nosferatus. I don't know. I've never heard a human in real life say their name out loud before, so I don't know. Now, if you're an old Atlanta headbanger, please correct me in the comments if you see this video and I'm saying the shit wrong. I'm going to link to their Metal Archives page anyway, so you can all check them out. But anyway, man, these guys appear to be the first like proper extreme metal band in the Atlanta area. Um, in terms of like more extreme than just playing like thrash metal like Hallows Eve, the lineup seems to have been like something of a revolving door. They only put out four demos between '88 and '95. But if you're into like early death metal, early black metal, strong like blackened occult sound, all this shit, some black thrash elements, they seem to be the first Atlanta band I can find with like legitimately like brutal vocals, what the dumb fucks like to call, Cookie Monster, while they're listening to like Bell and Sebastian and shit. So I mean, hey, check it out if you're into it. I mean, you can tell these guys are on top of shit to be coming out. It sounded like pretty brutal already in '88, So, and all their demos sound different, but not in like an identity crisis sort of different way. So really, man, I'm shocked they never even got like a compilation with all their demos. Like, Imprecation has that. How the fuck do you say Thurgia, Gotia, Suma, or whatever? They. I feel like this band needs one of those. But now the last band I wanted to mention was Demoncy. They're pretty well known in the grand scheme of things, but in case you don't know them, Fauci and Dawn demo from '93, sometimes considered the first, not just out of Atlanta, but the first proper American black metal release, period, man. Now, obviously, you got bands like Profanatica, Crucifier, they deserve a seat as well. But I think Demons are really more like decidedly black metal in the sense that like even if you're like a newbie, you've only seen Lords of Chaos, you don't really maybe you've heard a little Dark Throne or something, but like you could hear Demons and be like, oh yeah, that's black metal. I don't think you would get it confused with death metal or thrash metal, with these guys. And they still put out good records today, still put on a good live show. So I just wanted to throw them in there. All right, so obviously this is not like a comprehensive history whatsoever. I mean, you could probably go up to any 55-year-old man at a show in Atlanta and get more of like an inside scoop on all this shit. But I just wanted to highlight some important groups in the Atlanta underground metal history. I mean, not a metal authority, so by any means. So feel free to leave comments with like suggestions or corrections you have in mind. I just wanted to shed some light on this stuff, because like when I talk to people out in the world, like you hear about all the other big scenes and never really hear anyone bring up Atlanta other than like there's the perception of Atlanta as more of like a stoner rock, stoner doom type of place, although that is changing, like considering we got like Mass Destruction Fest every year now, but I just, yeah, I just wanted to highlight these bands because it's interesting to me as a metal fan that like you had all these different takes on metal like going on in Atlanta at the time. The fact that most of these bands aren't really talked about on like a wide scale, like in casual common conversation. But really, man, I mean, you look at almost every major metal underground subgenre of the 80s into the early 90s. I mean, power metal, heavy metal, speed metal, prog metal, thrash metal, death metal, black metal. Atlanta had it all, man. And in some cases, they were doing this shit pretty early in the game. So, hey, if you like the video, subscribe, suggest some bands in the comments. Do you love these bands? Do you hate these bands? I don't know. I'm going to leave the names of all the bands I mentioned in the description. So, yeah, subscribe and thank you.